Hello, welcome to today's orientation to CNCS for new AmeriCorps programs. Today's session will be recorded, so please disconnect at this time if you don't wish to be recorded. Today's webinar is one in a series of presentations designed for new AmeriCorps program staff to provide guidance on AmeriCorps programs. Heather McDonald. Heather is a program officer with AmeriCorps State and National, where she has worked since November of 2009. In her current role, she manages a portfolio of grants supporting AmeriCorps members throughout the United States. Additionally, she serves as the department's Healthy Future subject matter expert. Heather's prior experience includes 3 years as a program assistant in AmeriCorps State and National, 4 years as a country desk assistant in the Africa region of the Peace Corps, and a year and a half as an administrative clerk in the Peace Corps Placement Office. Welcome, Heather. All right. Now it's my turn to introduce Miss Beth Binkley. That's the lady that just talked to you. So Beth is also a program officer in AmeriCorps State and National. She joined our department in March of 2013. In her role, she oversees a diverse portfolio of commission and program grantees and contributes to a variety of critical projects and teams at CNCS. In addition to a variety of professional experiences, Beth has served as State AmeriCorps Director for the South Carolina Commission for National and Community Service and Service Director for the City Year Columbia program. All right, we're now going to move to an exciting technology check. We're going to make sure that everybody can hear us. We want to take a few minutes to make sure that you're accessing everything you need on this Skype. So on the phone lines will definitely be opened for Q&A during the presentation. On Skype, we're going to focus on using the conversation box on the left side of your screen throughout the presentation. Also, feel free to provide input or to ask a question at any time during the presentation. Let's do a quick test of the conversation box now by putting a short greeting to your colleagues. A general reminder, today's presentation will be posted on the National Service Knowledge Network at www.nationalservice.gov/resources. Oh, look at all those smiley people. Hello, Julie in Davenport. Nice to see you. So today's webinar is a part of something called the New AmeriCorps Program Staff Series. The New AmeriCorps Program Development Series is designed to help new CNCS grantees launch successful AmeriCorps programs. The 2017 Summer Series includes an orientation to CNCS and AmeriCorps Grants Management, AmeriCorps member recruitment selection, criminal history checks, financial management systems. Today's session, and then an exciting session number 4, which will be on August 24th, 2017, called AmeriCorps Member and Site Monitoring and Reporting Requirements. Today's agenda, so we've concluded all of the introductions. Well, just kidding, we're going to do a little bit more. But we're going to move on to AmeriCorps Member Orientation and Training and have a programmatic Q&A moment. Then we'll have a presentation on financial management with another Q&A moment, and we'll have a few closing remarks. So now it's time to get to know each other. So
Please use the conversation box. Let's take a few minutes to find out who's on today's session. In the conversation box, please enter your name, agency, location, relationship with AmeriCorps, and favorite fruit. Here's my example. I am Heather. I am from CNCS. I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm an AmeriCorps staff member, and I enjoy bananas. So Elizabeth from Goodwill Industries of Northern New England is in Portland, Maine, and she loves pomegranates. Well, nice to meet you and see you, Elizabeth. Erin Lennon from American Youth Works in Austin, Texas. She's a state and national grantee, and she loves strawberries. Oh man, you guys are so speedy. Maddie at the Salvation Army in Anchorage, Alaska is a program manager who enjoys strawberries. You guys didn't know that you had this much fruit passion, did you? It's pretty exciting. So yeah, thank you for sharing all these things, and I hope you learned a little bit about each other. But more importantly, we tested the technology, so thank you for participating. So thank you again for joining us today. Member development is a critical aspect of running a successful AmeriCorps program. A strong development plan, which includes orientation and training, is a key component in driving member service by ensuring the members are fully prepared to carry out the program's activities. Today, we are going to discuss the various components of successful member development so that you have the tools you need to create and implement a solid plan for your own program. AmeriCorps program management is represented in this way: the cycle of AmeriCorps program development. The cycle is a general outline for how an AmeriCorps program may create the appropriate structure to help members be successful. This is a general program model. The way that it looks will vary tremendously around the country. Tribal programs will design and deliver programs that meet their own community's needs. Multi-state programs will look very different in different parts of the country. And state programs will also be tailored to reflect the needs of their states and community members. The program development cycle is an ongoing process, and member management tasks occur throughout it. This is also a good way to think about continuous program improvement as you continue to move through your program's own development cycle. Here are examples of 3 elements of the cycle that particularly relate to member training. Vision phase. In the first phase of AmeriCorps program development, programs need to articulate how member service will positively impact the community need or problem the program is addressing. This includes how programs will train members to address the need or problem through their service activities. Foundation building. In the next phase of AmeriCorps program development, programs need to provide details on the exact tasks and nature of the member service in the required member service agreement and the position description. These 2 program management tools will show members exactly how they will be successful and make a difference in their communities. In the third phase of AmeriCorps program development, programs need to equip their members with the necessary skills and knowledge to be successful. This is done through member orientation and service training. Let's take a look at the CNCS requirements and expectations for member development. So what are the CNCS member training requirements? CNCS language combines orientation and training. For our purposes today, we will separate them out for a quick discussion. These are the required items in the 2017 AmeriCorps Grant Terms and Conditions found on page 7 and 8. Programs must provide member orientation, training on prohibited activities, and make sure to pay attention and have a limit on the number of allowable hours. So for example, how much time may AmeriCorps members in my program spend in education and training activities? That's under 45 CFR 2520.50. So those rules are no more than 20% of the aggregate of all AmeriCorps member service hours in your program, as reflected in the member enrollments in the National Service Trust, may be spent in education and training activities. Capacity building activities and direct service activities do not count towards the 20% cap on education and training activities. In addition, guidance on member orientation and training is infused throughout CNCS, guidance for AmeriCorps grantees. This guidance can be found from the annual notice of funding opportunity to the regulations. All of this reflects our overall goal for member orientation and training, to equip AmeriCorps members with the necessary skills and knowledge to successfully complete their terms of service. Keep in mind that CNCS rules, regulations, grant terms and conditions, and policy FAQs are where we lay out the minimum requirements. Commissions and programs always have the opportunity to provide additional trainings above and beyond CNCS minimum requirements. If you need a refresher on where to find the requirements, I recommend that you visit the Managing AmeriCorps Grants page on the nationalservice.gov website. Now I'm going to hand over the next part of the presentation to Beth to discuss the components of member development.
Thank you, Heather. In preparing members for service, it's important to look at three components of member development. That includes orientation, service training, ongoing training, and professional development. And no matter the program design, all members need these three areas of development. Let's take a minute to examine each type. Member orientation prepares the participant for his or her relationship to the Ameri world. Orientation is the first step in cultivating a positive working relationship with AmeriCorps members. A thorough orientation can help reduce members' anxiety about their new service role, and it can help establish positive expectations for performance and communication that will last throughout the service term. Orientation forms a solid sense of how the AmeriCorps program will function and how the AmeriCorps members fit into the Ameri world. Specifically, orientation helps to define why a member should be serving in this program and in AmeriCorps, to define the structure of the program, and helps the member to see how she will be serving, and also demonstrates how she will fit into the program. Some examples of orientation topics include the history of national service, which is how national service has evolved over time and what it means today. Prohibited activities, which you will hear us reiterate several times throughout this presentation. This includes prohibited activities for members and the volunteers that members recruit and or manage. Member service agreement. This is the document that members sign at the start of their program year, and it should be reviewed with the members during orientation so that they understand all aspects of the AmeriCorps program, the expectations, the benefits, including a living allowance, the education award, health care and or child care when applicable. Other areas that would be reviewed under the member service agreement would be the grievance procedure, reasonable accommodation, and drug-free workplace and non-discrimination information. The position description should be reviewed with the members during orientation so that members understand their roles and expectations and responsibilities at their service site. The AmeriCorps identity is also an area that would need to be reviewed during orientation, so that members will know that they are AmeriCorps, part of AmeriCorps, and that the staff and community where members are serving will also know that they are AmeriCorps members. Just as a reminder, the AmeriCorps identity is something that every grantee commits to in their awarded grant, including for members to wear AmeriCorps logos every day, for AmeriCorps members to create and deliver elevator speeches, and for the AmeriCorps logo to be proudly displayed on websites and at service sites. Another aspect of orientation that would need to be covered with members is their time and attendance so that they understand when to complete their timesheets, who's responsible for signing their timesheets, and how they differentiate between service, trainings, and fundraising. Moving on to the second component of service training, a thorough orientation, which we just discussed the elements, is necessary for all AmeriCorps members, no matter the program type or design. And just as orientation is important, the service training is just as important. In this aspect of the AmeriCorps program management, it's a great opportunity for customization and creativity based on the service to be implemented within your program. A training program puts together the program needs, the member needs, and the skills and knowledge necessary in order for members to succeed. Service training prepares members to understand the population to be served, to learn the curriculum or intervention to be implemented, and to know the expectations and responsibilities of his or her service. Another way of looking at the member training program design is by examining the connection between the duties members will be required to perform and the qualifications that applicants will need in order to enroll in the program. The training program must include specific guidance and skills to prepare members for their assigned duties if they are not required to have those skills when they arrive. The timing, topics, methods, and training staff of AmeriCorps training programs vary across the network. No matter what the program design is or where AmeriCorps members serve, AmeriCorps programs must ensure that the training program includes sufficient opportunities to build skills necessary to provide the program's intervention. This is an area we see where programs struggle, particularly those that are new and designing their training programs from scratch. Training on the program's intervention is an absolutely critical point in setting members up to be successful. As the slide states, members must receive high-quality training on technical skills needed to provide the program's intervention, and the methods for delivering this component will vary widely between programs depending on the program design and the member position description. Some examples of member training may include, but this is not limited to, member safety. This could be regarding serving vulnerable populations, how to operate a power tool, how to conduct home visits, and again, this depends on the member service activities and the intervention being implemented. Member wellness is an area of training to allow members information on how to connect to other members serving, how to manage their stress, how to manage service expectations. During member service, they will be collecting data on the activities and interventions that they are implementing. So it's important to have trainings on the expectations of data collection, on the timelines of collecting that data, and how to use the tools in which they are using to collect the data. Also, service-specific training. This would be any training that is related to the service that is being implemented or to the intervention that is being implemented, whether it's how to identify native flora and fauna in an environmental program, how to manage a classroom for an education program, or how to conduct an energy audit. And again, this list is not exhaustive, and programs need to include trainings based on their own program design that will prepare members for successful service. Another aspect of member training is ongoing training and professional development. As a program moves through the service year, additional training opportunities such as ongoing trainings and professional development will allow members to strengthen the knowledge and skills already gained in service-specific areas, learn new skills and possibly earn certifications, and learn to translate the service experience into future employment opportunities. And again, we have some examples of ongoing training topics. These can be service-specific trainings that can continue throughout the years, webinars, discussions, or sharing of best practices. professional development opportunities specific to the service that members are engaged in. And again, these could be certifications or licenses, opportunities for continued learning. Life after AmeriCorps training allows members to work on building their resumes, practicing interview skills, and applying their learned skills to future opportunities. So now that we have gone through the required CNCS trainings and orientations, and we have given examples, what does your training provide? Or excuse me, what training topics do you provide? And in this discussion, we are asking you to use the conversation box again and look at the questions that we have up on the screen. And that would also include what activities do you include in your training programs. We've given some examples, and also who leads the training and the training program and provides the trainings. Okay, Sarah, thank you. Teacher aid training with both AmeriCorps members and the teachers led by district's curriculum director. Great. And Aaron is sharing a civic reflection that's led by staff and crew leaders. Michael is sharing child abuse recognition and reporting, poverty awareness, cultural competency led by staff, and state abuse prevention programs. Great. Thank you for sharing these. This is great. Anybody else? Okay, Elizabeth is sharing that her program collaborates with a lot of partners to give trainings. The program is serving youth, so they have trainings around mentoring and restorative justice. These are great examples. Thank you. Anybody else? No worries about the typo. We are very forgiving. I've had a lot of vocal typos today. Native Alaskan Cultural Sensitivity and Awareness Training. Thank you, Maddie. Okay, so those are some great examples. I appreciate you sharing those, everybody. We are now going to hear from one of your peers, Stacey Rap from the Local Initiative Support Corporation, also known as LISC. She's going to present the member training plan for her program. And Stacey, give me just a minute because I want to introduce you. Stacey is the AmeriCorps Program Director for LISC. She manages all of everything AmeriCorps for that program, from ensuring high-quality member service assignments and partner selection to managing LISC's relationship with CNCS and other major funders. Stacey got hooked on LISC vision and mission in 1996 as an administrative assistant with the LISC Greater Newark office, where she discovered she had a passion for helping residents launch careers in community development through service with AmeriCorps. From Newark, Stacey moved to LISC headquarters to serve as the program officer and ultimately director for the AmeriCorps program. Stacey holds a BA from the College of St. Rose and an MBA in marketing from Rutgers. Stacey, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Beth. Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, cool, great. So thanks for that introduction, Beth. And I'm looking through the presentation that you and Heather were doing, going, okay, do I do this? Do I do this? Do I do this? And making some notes along the way. So thanks for that. So for those of you who might not have heard of LISC, We are a financial intermediary. We basically lend dollars to help the support of affordable housing. And then about 10, 15 years ago, started to look at also what are the other services that we need to be doing as a company to bolster the community development efforts. So we were looking at health, safety, and sports and recreation, all different aspects. But for me, it always came back to, do we have the right people in place? Because without the right people, the changes that you could be making in the physical world aren't going to take hold, because you need to have residents engaged to sort of keep things going. And that's why I think AmeriCorps is such an important part of what we do at LISC. So we're a national direct. We've had an AmeriCorps program for 22 years. We're going to be starting our 23rd year this fall. We'll be supporting 14 different markets across the country. So we have East Coast, West Coast, the South, and this year we're expanding into a rural market as well. What we do is we place 1, maybe 2 AmeriCorps members at smaller nonprofits through an operating site network, which is our local LISC field offices. And then that local field office manages a cohort of anywhere between 5 to, I think our largest is going to be 20 this year. And part of our training design is that when members are identified, we give them an initial onboarding. We actually don't call it an orientation so much, because I think people were thinking orientation, oh, I've got to go to this thing. When they look at it from the perspective of an onboarding, it has more of that sort of on-the-job training aspect to it. Our onboarding session typically lasts for 2 full days. The first day we bring only our members together, and we try to take into consideration not only adult learning principles, but also how people learn. And so I call it my dog and pony show, and I get a little tired of it by, I think, like the 10th or 12th time that it happens, because we do it in each market. But it's an interesting way to not only help build the team dynamic for that local cohort, but also for us nationally to get a sense of who are we working with? What else do we need to be doing this year that we may not have done the year before to ensure that members will stay with the program throughout the service term? So the first day we do a team building activity, and then we use a Post-it note activity called Cool. What do you know? What do you want to know? And then what have you learned? And what that allows us to do is, rather than walking through sort of a canned presentation, it allows us to have every voice in the room heard, as well as then know what aspects we need to be talking about. But we come prepared to talk about all of the things that Beth and Heather were talking about, like, what is AmeriCorps? What is the organization's history? What are your roles and responsibilities as a member? The biggest one we get is, when are we going to get paid? And those types of things. It also allows us the opportunity to assess right then and there and say, well, that's not exactly what happens. And so it allows us to kind of manage any misconceptions that people may have had about joining the program. Typically and that takes most of our morning, and then over lunch we usually invite an alumni panel to come in and talk about, well, what are the things I wish I had known at the beginning of my service that I knew at the end of my service, or that I needed to be successful. And usually these are individuals that have stayed in the field of community development, have sort of a mid-level management role, and are interested in staying connected to what we're doing. The afternoon, we play Jeopardy, and I am their host, Alexis Trebek, and we go through and we talk about everything related to when are they getting paid, how do they keep time. We have a category on prohibited activities. We have a category on their timekeeping and reporting. And then we have kind of like category just on member development and learning and what they can expect from a training perspective throughout the course of their service term. And then we wrap it up at the end of the day talking about elevator speeches, and I give them some homework. You know, because I thought I wanted to be a teacher, and I didn't end up that place. I give them some homework to take home so that they can come back and give their elevator speeches on day 2 with their supervisors in the room. And so the second day we have a much larger crowd, and then that's where we train both our members and our placement site supervisors also on prohibited activities. So we typically start with an energizer, move into the elevator speeches for a more formal way to introduce one another. And then we actually do a technical training on our online timekeeping and reporting system. So I share with everyone what our CNCS goals and metrics are for the program so that they can see where they fit in, because they will have signed off on a service description posting and their goals that they're supposed to achieve even before they come to the onboarding. That happens before they're even enrolled as an AmeriCorps member, so that there's no misunderstanding of this is what we are expecting you to accomplish during the course of your service term. And it includes some of the things like that were mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. Then in the afternoon, we usually do a swearing in, which is, I think, the highlight of the training, and they officially become an AmeriCorps member. And we give them an AmeriCorps pin. So their supervisors actually pin them after lunch, so it's just like they're going steady. And they get pictures taken. We try to invite a local elected official or a representative from their office or a main funder of the program or all of the above to join us. And it really is kind of one of the more touching moments of the 2 days. And then after we break for lunch, usually that's about lunchtime, then we go into a prohibited activities discussion. And we've tried this a couple of ways, and one of the things that we're always doing is trying to figure out how can we do this better. So we had developed a role play that we were using around prohibited activities, and unfortunately we had some people who didn't keep it G-rated all the time or appropriate. So we moved to doing sort of a case scenario where, and I'm not saying that we did prohibited activities, so I'm going to ask Beth to take a deep breath here. But we've had some articles published where AmeriCorps members have been noted, and there may have been the perception that that was going on, when in actuality it wasn't. And so through our due diligence and investigation, you know, we put aside those concerns and gotten information. But we actually use that as a teaching tool to say, this is how things could get misconstrued. And I think what we've noticed since we started doing it that way, this was our second year doing that, is people are so much more open to having the discussion. So we talk about whys versus don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And so that's the big piece of what we do for training at the beginning. Then about halfway through our course, we do a leadership conference. And I call it a leadership conference because we really want to invest in the AmeriCorps members' leadership skills. We firmly believe that they can get the technical skills either through their service or through their local cohort training, through the webinars that we do with LISC that are open to them. But it's very rare that you get an opportunity to kind of explore how do you resolve conflict? What does cultural competency look like? We talk about the mindful leader. And so we bring all of our members from across the country, and the picture that's up there now is from our conference in Rhode Island, which is always capped off with a service project. So everything they learn throughout the course of that week-long training, they then put into place out in the community as kind of our leave behind. And doing it right around the 5-month mark, it gives them enough time to kind of know what they're doing on the ground, They come together, they get this amazing experience where they're meeting people from all over the country who are doing the same work as they're doing. So they get this connectedness, and then it re-energizes them to go back for the last 5 months of their service and finish out the term strong. And those are the two major components of what our training is. And I don't know, did I answer all of the, I think, questions that maybe were put forth about it?
Stacey, this is Beth. Thank you for providing that. We did have one other question for you to, or sort of topic to address. And I did also want to ask too, how are your members, if you can talk a little bit, what are you doing in terms of the site-specific training in terms of their interventions that they're implementing or regarding their position descriptions?
Oh, sure. So, sure. So with site-specific training, it's kind of a two-prong approach. Because we're placing members individually at smaller nonprofits, we make sure that the person who's going to be their supervisor has a training and onboarding program for that individual member from the day that they start. So during the application process, we ask those questions like, how will you make sure that the member has the skills that they need in order to undertake the service that you're asking them to do? In the service description, we also put in sort of the required skills that will be needed to do that. In some of our markets where the members are doing pretty much the same exact activity, they'll get together as a stronger network, and they'll be able to go to kind of offsite trainings that have been organized for them. When they're in a cohort where there's a member maybe working on capacity building work with long-term resident engagement as volunteers, and then someone else might be doing financial literacy counseling. What we tend to do there in the cohort is try to identify specific trainings that a member could benefit from, as well as provide that training to the group as a whole. So it'll be a little more sampled, as well as being member specific. And then at the leadership conference, we actually do some specific training through what we call our affinity group networks. And so we get our members together as we have 3 sort of main areas that members serve in. They're either serving with our financial opportunity centers, which help people to budget, get living wage jobs, and work on sort of tax assistance programming through employment skills training and job referrals. We have a large subset of our members that are working on physical housing development and housing counseling, so issues around housing. And then our third bucket is our community engagement, where most of our members are working to engage long-term resident volunteers. And so when they come together as those affinity groups, they talk about the issues that they're facing and provide a lot of peer learning, as well as some expert advice and training around what can you do or what's worked in another area so that they can adapt it to their own.
Great, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And one other question we had for you, or one other topic to address, is do you have any recommendations for new program staff who are creating or improving their member trainings?
So I have lots of advice, and so it's free, so it's worth what you pay for it, right? I think as I look back to when I started doing group trainings, people don't know out in the session what you may have missed or where you should have gone. And so being confident with your material is something that's really important. And having a trainer or someone who is delivering the trainer who can connect with the members. I think what what I've found with that is that they hear it not only from us, but then they'll also hear it from their peers. And so being able to build those bridges is something that, as you're thinking about what your curriculum looks like, think also about how it's being delivered. Because you could say it, but if you're not saying it in a way that someone can hear it, it's just not going to go through.
Great. Thank you, Stacey. We're going to open it up now to questions from folks online, and please use your conversation box to type in questions, and we'll go from there. Does anybody have any questions specifically for Stacey? Okay, Sarah has a question. Could the outline of the 2-day onboarding be shared?
Yeah, most definitely. I can actually, so we have all of our materials in PowerPoint, Word, Excel, and so I can share those with Beth and get them out.
Great, thanks, Stacey.
You're welcome.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. Cheers.
You just have to avoid the typos, that's all. And you have to have a good, the jokes they didn't get on the curriculum design, sorry.
Those are for only live and in person?
They are, sorry, my favorite one is, people are always wondering if they leave early, can they get part of their education award? And I just tell them to channel their inner In Vogue, which is, they're never gonna get it. Never ever, 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 ever gonna get it. And I may sing too, but I will spare you all my singing today.
Okay. Any other questions? I guess we're good. I think that means we were pretty thorough. So I'm going to turn it over. Thank you, Stacey. I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie Janicki from the Office of Grants Management. Bonnie is a senior grants officer for grant operations in our Office of Grants Management. She supervises a team of grants officers responsible for the daily grants management of a diverse portfolio that includes AmeriCorps State and National, Social Innovation Funds, Martin Luther King Jr., and many other grant types. Bonnie began her federal service with CNCS in 1994, and she continues to enjoy her work. Here you go, Bonnie.
Thank you very much, Beth, and thank you all for joining us. I know there's a million other things you could be doing with your afternoon, and I appreciate you spending your time with us. So I'm going to continue the conversation that Tracy, my colleague, had with you all in the last webinar. We're talking about grants management, and I'm asking you all to please not tune us out when you hear me talk about financial things and talk about criminal history checks or the Notice of Grant Award. This really does apply to everyone. You may think, oh my gosh, she's talking about accounting, I can turn her off for a little while, check email. But actually, that's really when I want you to turn the email off and actually really listen to me. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I do want to make sure that you understand it so that you make sure that your folks are doing what they need to be doing. So in the last webinar, we really just kind of gave you the highest level of overview. So today I'm going to just go just a little bit deeper, not very deep, but just a little bit deeper about your Notice of Grant Award, the terms and conditions, your accounting system, and just a reminder on criminal history checks. We're laying the foundation, and then we're going to start building your house. So with that, let's start with that review of the terms and conditions. So the corporation, when we issue your Notice of Grant Award, we reference some terms and conditions, and there's actually a link in your Notice of Grant Award. to the terms and conditions. The terms and conditions are the guiding principles for your grant, and they contain key program and financial management rules. It's important for you to know that these terms and conditions are binding by the corporations. They're binding for you and the subgrant and your subgrantees, or for any programs that actually receive corporation funds. The general terms and conditions, those are kind of your overall rules that govern your award, and they have things like the order of precedence. In addition, they provide guidance on financial management standards, national service criminal history check requirements, the corporation's monitoring responsibilities, and then you also have the program-specific terms and conditions, and these provide guidance like around what we were talking about earlier, member management or prohibited activities and member timekeeping, the distribution of living allowance and other member support costs. And then there's also information about reporting requirements and so much more. I urge you, if you have not, you need to get a copy of these terms and conditions, and you need to know them. You don't have to memorize them, but you need to know what's in them and where to find them. So oh my goodness, I don't have a copy. What do I do? So you're going to go to the link in your actual Notice to Grant Award, and if you don't have a copy of your Notice to Grant Award, find out who does, and then go to the link there, and that's where you can pull the two different terms and conditions. And also, when you're doing that, look at your Notice to Grant Award, because that also has lots of rules, laws, and references that apply to program management and financial management. Because all staff are equally responsible for learning and implementing the grant requirements, I encourage everybody to do this. So as soon as you get your Notice of Grant Award, gather your folks in your organization and go through your Notice of Grant Award, go through your terms and conditions, and make sure that everybody has a consistent understanding of the content and their role in managing the award. Your Notice of Grant Award also includes your approved performance and budget period. It has the amount of the award, the details on your MSYs and your slots, the grant regulatory and budgetary match requirements, and any special conditions that we may have placed on your award. And then finally, one key piece that you want to see in your Notice of Grant Award is that it has the name of your program and your grants officer and their phone number, so that in the event you have any questions or need some interpretation of the terms and conditions, you can always reach out to them. Okay, so now we are moving on to the accounting system review. Now remember, turn your email off. You cannot tune me out here. Okay, so in addition to providing guidance for conducting national service criminal history checks, your terms and conditions outline the rules that govern your awards and their order of precedence. They provide standards for efficient financial management and include the ability to distinguish grant versus non-grant related expenses and CNCS versus grantee share. They also identify costs by program year and budget category, including direct and indirect costs. Now you need to make sure, I want you to go back, I want you to have a conversation with your accounting folks. I want you to ask them, does the accounting system account for each award separately and identify costs by program year? If it doesn't, it needs to, it must. Tell them this is a rule. Your federal agency is telling you you have to do this. You cannot commingle funds. You have to take precautions to make sure that this doesn't happen. It doesn't mean you have to have separate bank accounts for everything, but you need proper accounting systems to show what's being charged to the different funds. Your accounting system also needs to be able to compare budget to actual. You have to be able to see, here's what we budgeted with the corporation, or here's what we budgeted with our prime, and here's what is our actual costs. And then also you want to make sure that you have the requirements that you are documenting everything and that you're holding onto your records based on your record retention policies. If you don't have a record retention policy, you need to make sure that you do. Cost charged to the grant must be supported by clear documentation, and you need to be able to verify that there's verification of expenses, of member service hours, and of eligibility. Your records for the grant and budget actual reconciliations, that they support for future budget development, that there's historical evidence that is required by your organization, policies and procedures, and that there's evidence of your grant-related accomplishments. Please remember, if you don't document, it didn't happen. You must document. Okay, So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here on criminal history checks.
Hey,
I just want
that's
to
okay. You're fine.
remind you that criminal history checks
Go
is a
right ahead.
low-hanging fruit. Our auditors love to go out and look for that. It's the first thing they look at. So what I want to make sure you understand is that you take the steps to conduct the checks on time every time. On this page, if you click again, Barbara, we got the link to take you to the all of the resources that you need for criminal history checks. And I want you to bookmark that and make that your best friend. That's where you want to spend your time, because auditors love to look at criminal history checks. It's a low-hanging fruit. They can easily get findings when they go there. Okay, so now we've got our foundation laid, and we're getting ready to build our financial house. And so I'm thinking about, what do we want in our house? What do we want to make sure we have now that we've kind of laid our strong foundation? So let's talk about that. What would our good organization's house look like? So I look at an organization, and I would want it to have written and followed policies and procedures. I would want my house to have qualified and trained financial staff. They need to be trained on federal grants, on corporation-specific information, that there is a clear separation of duties. I would then also want to make sure that in my financial house that there is a lot of effective communication. And when I say effective communication, I mean within program, finance, your human capital, your legal team, your management. And then also in my house, I would want to make sure that there is succession planning and cross training, because when somebody wins that lottery, somebody not being there isn't an excuse for missing things or not doing what you're supposed to do. And then finally, I want to make sure that there is a constant self-assessment and continuous improvement. Right? There's always opportunities for growth, and when you identify weaknesses, you identify them, then you move forward and work with them. And then the last thing that when I think about a good house when I'm building my financial house is that there's an active, knowledgeable, and informed board and finance committee. They can help with raising match, capacity building, recruitment, and even oversight, especially for smaller organizations. Okay, so now we've kind of got our walls up, our roof up. And so now I'm looking at the inside of my house, and I'm thinking about like the policies and procedures we just talked about. So what are policies and procedures? So they're a set of written, and I say written, underline that in your head, written documents that describe the organization's rules for operations. The policies explain what needs to be done, and the procedures say what's necessary to fulfill the policy, and it explains how it will be completed. All staff need to be familiar with these documents. They need to know how to follow them and abide by them. And with that in mind, you also have to make sure that there is training to ensure that all staff understand it. It's really embarrassing when you share with with an auditor, here's our policies and procedures, and then they go start to talk to your staff, and your staff have no idea what those policies and procedures are and have never seen it. So once you have those written policies and procedures, staff need to know about them, how to use them, and that they are trained and that they are actually following them. Accountability actually starts with executive leadership, but really it is everyone's responsibility. Policies and procedures help to ensure that accountability and providing the information that it's documented, it's up to date, and explains the rationale and it includes the principal transactions and completed forms, and incorporates the federal and corporation rules and regulations. So being able to check the policies and procedure box goes beyond answering yes. It really needs to be, do you have them? And then you really have to make sure that you're using them. Okay, so I feel like we're getting some of our walls up in our house. Now let's just touch on documentation. As I've said before, and I cannot say it enough, when we say what do you need to document, everything that you want to count has to be documented. Again, if it isn't documented, it didn't happen. So all grant-related expenses, and I'm not kidding. It's not only corporation share, but it's the grantee share, right? Like you have to document the grantee share the exact same way as you're documenting the corporation share. And this also includes your cash and your in-kind donations. There has to be documentation for those as well. So let's talk a little bit more about why retaining documentation. So we say, we want all costs charged to the grant must be supported by clear documentation, and to use what do you want to make sure it has? You want to make sure that it verifies expenses. It has, if it's related to members' service of hours and their eligibility. It's a record for your grant budget to actual reconciliation. It supports the future for budget development. If you're looking next year at what you did and you've got documentation of what you had from the last year, it helps you with your development of a budget for the following year. It provides historical evidence that is required by your organization's policies and procedures that are required in your grant terms and conditions. And then again, it's evidence of accomplishments. You've got the documentation to show what you've done. So when we talk about documentation, excuse me, and we talk about that low-hanging fruit, another thing that our auditors really love to look at when they come out besides criminal history checks is timesheets. So this is another one of those low-hanging fruits. Are there timesheets, especially for staff time? Of course, there's always a problem with member timesheets as well. Excuse me, but timesheets is another one. And so we are sharing this information with you all today because we don't want you to get caught in those traps. These are easy things that can be done now at the start of your programs, and or if they're not being done, you can implement them quickly. So one of the low-hanging fruits besides criminal history checks are the timesheets. So OMB issued guidance that timesheets are no longer required, but excuse me, what they did say is that you have to be able to document that the time charged to both the federal and the grantee share of the time, and there needs to be verification of the time, and it needs to show the hours on a daily basis, and it needs to be validated and verified. And so basically they outlined all the things that you would do in a timesheet, but just said you didn't have to call it a timesheet. So it's critical for staff to make sure that they document time charged to both the federal and the grantee share of the budget. And if you are working on multiple projects, that you document your actual time spent on the multiple projects. We want the timesheet to be all inclusive. Okay, so we are just moving right along. Stay away from your email for just a little bit while longer. We're almost finished here. So let's just talk about financial reporting. This is another easy one that you guys can do, and I know most of you all don't do it, but I want you to find out who does do it in your organizations, because they may not be reporting the right things to us, and we may think that you guys aren't spending any money at all because we're getting zeros from your organization saying, no, we're not spending anything. And so you want to make sure you're having conversations with the people that are actually doing your financial reporting. So if you're a direct grantee of the corporation, there's actually two different reports that are submitted, two different financial reports that are submitted related to your spending. And so I just want to take a few minutes to highlight those two different ones. The nice thing with the government is that we like to keep things nice and clear, and so both reports that you have to submit are called the Federal Financial Report. And so the first federal financial report that you have to submit is one that is based on expenditures that you submit to the corporation and e-grants. And for most of you, you would do that semi-annual, and you'll report on the corporation share of expenditures and then your match, your share of expenditures. And so we look at that to see how you're doing with actually spending the money. The second federal financial report that you have to submit is to the payment management system. And again, this is for our direct grantees. And that is actually submitted quarterly, and that's to the payment management system. And that's related to your disbursements of funds. And so we realize that these two reports will not reconcile as you're through the life cycle of the grant, but ultimately at the end of the grant, they will have to reconcile. We expect that they will be close to one another as you're working through your grant. But we know that disbursements are different than expenditures. And so we ask you to get with your finance people and make sure that you understand what they're submitting to us, the corporation, in eGrants, and to the payment management system. One thing that is crazy here is the importance of submitting your reports in on time. If you do not submit your reports by the due date that's outlined in your terms and conditions, then you're considered late. And late is late here. 1 day, 20 days, 30 days, 40 days. And it is a risk indicator to us. It's a flag that you were aware from the start of your grant what your reporting periods are, and you still can't make the date, even though we give you a significant amount of time to get this done. So with that, I cannot say enough about the importance of making sure you submit your reports on time. If you are having problems with getting something in, you always have that ability to use the comments on your report, and you're waiting for something else to be revised, but get your report in on time. In the event that you absolutely have to have some sort of extension, you can always reach out to your grants officer. Again, their name and number is on your Notice of Grant Award for the report that is submitted to the corporation in eGrants. If you need extra time to submit your report in the payment management system, then you would contact your liaison there. So regardless, I want to make sure that you know that the information that you put on that report needs to come from your financial systems. We expect those numbers to be tied. They need to come from there. I want to make sure that if you're not doing it, that your financial folks are reviewing and reconciling the information to confirm accuracy, because we actually do use that information. We also look at it not only when we come out and do site visits, we look at it when you submit it to make sure that it looks like you're on target with what you're supposed to be doing. And also we use it like for IPERA to make sure that we drill down for to check expenditures when we're doing improper payment reviews. And again, I can't say enough about the importance of submitting these reports on time and making sure that they come from your financial systems and that you have the supporting documentation that is in the with the numbers that are in your system. So with that, I think we are coming towards the end of what I want to make sure I share with you today as you're building your financial house. Here are two places to go to find your terms and conditions, your FAQs, and then also trainings related to financial management. If, as you're going through your award cycle, you have questions, I encourage you to our subgrantees to call your prime grantees, and our prime grantees, I encourage you to call your program and grants officers. They are a wonderful resource as you're building your house. So thank you very much for spending your afternoon with us, and I will turn it over to. You know what? I'm going to actually, before I turn it over to anyone, I am going to see if anybody has questions. So if you want to type up any of your questions in the chat box there, we'll give it a minute and look, and then we'll wrap things up.
Hi, Bonnie. This is Barbara Reynolds. While folks are typing in the conversation box, I did have a question about your comment about everything getting in on time. Is it possible or allowable if folks are missing information? Like if there's something going on, there's a time lapse, can they submit an incomplete report on time and then revise and resubmit it? Is that allowable, or do you need it 100% done and final?
So submitting it on time is critical. So I would ask if something is missing to make a note in the comment box, get it in on time, and then if need be, we can return the report back to the grantee and make the adjustments as necessary. One of our questions when we're looking at risk is how many times we actually have to return a report to the grantee, because then that's an indicator that something potentially could be going on. Returning it once, not a big deal. But if we're returning it on a regular basis, then it tells us that perhaps something's not as strong as it needs to be, or there's something needs to be worked on. Yep, thank you. And again, that's a great place where you would use the comment box and say, I'm still waiting to hear from this subgrantee. and I just don't have their information. Yep.
Okay, I think that is all the questions that we have for Bonnie, and we're going to wrap it up. You can see on the slide here we have more resources at our website, and where you can find resources and links to the training information that we provided. And also, as a reminder, we have our next AmeriCorps program staff webinar on monitoring members and sites on August 24th from 3 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And with that, we thank you for your participation.
Yeah, thank you so much. Don't forget that your friends are your program officers and your grants officers at CNCS, and we can help connect you to more tools and resources. You're not on your own. Thank you again for participating today. Bye.